Hello, my name is Jason, and today we'll be creating a piece on this miniature panel. This is a cradled panel, so it has these large edges on the side. They're about 2 inches thick, and they're great for miniature shows because you don't actually have to frame them, which is super great. I'm really excited to actually try out this piece. I've never actually painted on pure wood. I usually adhere a piece of paper to a board, but this time I'm actually going through and drawing over the top of it and actually gonna paint just straight onto the wood. Now I'm using acrylic gouache for this painting, and I think that'll actually help adhere to the wood. I think with regular gouache, I've never actually tried this before since this is kind of my first time painting on a wood surface. I don't think regular gouache will really adhere very well. I think it'll kind of come off the surface just a little bit too much. It'll actually just pick up as you're painting. But I could be totally wrong. I'm just not sure about layering with regular gouache on a wood panel. I'm just not sure it'll layer very well on this surface. But I haven't actually tried that. I picked the acrylic gouache because I've been having fun with it a lot lately. It seems to be really nice when with layering because it dries to a permanent layer. It's pretty much acrylic, just in a matte form, but you can water it down a lot like normal gouache, a lot like watercolor, which makes it super fun to actually use, which is just kind of appealed to me when I'm working, because I happen to, with normal gouache tend to make mistakes and need to actually go through and make some adjustments. So the acrylic gouache allows me to really do that. The only really tricky part is needing to have a wet palette to keep things wet as you're working and to make sure that things don't dry out as you're, painting. Things, paint doesn't dry on your brush or on your palette. But otherwise, it, has been a really good time actually working with this medium. And I think I'll be using acrylic gouache for a lot of my newer pieces going forward. Yeah, so I'm just kind of starting the sketch here. I'm just working on the sketch straight onto the wood panel. And as you'll see, I've kind of played with some new ideas for this concept here. I thought it'd be really fun. I was looking through a lot of photos and found this really cool reference of a view from one of the ferries in Seattle. And I thought it was really cute and the lighting was really interesting and wanted to add some of my own flair to it. So I added these frogs that are just kind of sitting there sleeping, and it's almost like they're coming home from a long day at work and they're just like really tired and commuting home. So I thought it was really fun, and I wanted to add like a couple other animals in the scene, so you'll see that a little bit later. I'm drawing those in. But yeah, so the lighting was really interesting for this piece. You see the lines kind of going through. Those will be the base for some of the lighting, this kind of sunset light that's casting shadows onto the characters, onto the seat. And so I thought the lighting was super interesting for this piece, and I think it turned out really well in the end. Just how all the colors really work together, all the shadows just really kind of sells a really moody kind of atmosphere with this piece. But yeah, so I'm just drawing in the characters. I drew most of the background first and then kind of just drawing the characters on top of what I had drawn over the top. The reference I was using, I kind of just drew what was there and then going back and drawing these characters over the top of what I had. And I kind of just wanted the idea that there were these animals that were just like commuting to work or commuting home after work. So yeah, I went in and started painting with the acrylic gouache. Usually how I start most paintings with thin washes, kind of that more like milky, coffee-like consistency of washes. And it was really easy. I kind of liked the feeling of the paint on the wood. Again, this is like my first time painting on directly onto a wood surface. So it kind of had an interesting feel and texture to it because the paint really, it definitely kind of soaked into the wood and kind of gave it an interesting texture to it. I'm not necessarily sold on the texture of the paint or of the wood surface and how it looks in the end. You can still see a lot of the wood grain through the paint itself. And you almost have to build up a pretty thick layer in order to not see the color of the wood underneath, which is totally fine. I actually kind of like it having a color to the wood, because usually if you're painting like the blues of like the sky on top of a like a warmer surface, it'll help to neutralize the colors in the paint layer, which actually really helps. A lot of people tend to tone their canvases, tone their papers, especially in like oil painting or acrylic painting. So this was actually really nice to paint over the top of. I just wasn't really sold on the wood texture kind of going through. I think for future pieces, for future of these miniatures, I might prime the surface with maybe like Daniel Smith's watercolor ground or just like a gesso. Since I'm using the acrylic gouache, I think a normal gesso would probably work just fine. But just something to kind of get rid of that wood grain surface. Again, I wasn't really sold on it, so I might think about what to use next time. But otherwise, it was still a lot of fun. The painting process was pretty identical. I kind of just built up in layers and worked very gently to kind of blend sections out, softening the edges with like a damp brush. And then really I'm just going through and filling out things kind of in a patchwork motion. I tend to work like this, especially when I'm working heavily from a reference. I tend to kind of work in patches rather than building up things all at once. I feel like it just kind of, with the workflow that I use and with gouache as a medium, especially with how acrylic gouache specifically dries really quickly, I think that kind of working a little more patchy is a little more beneficial for my workflow. But the other way around is certainly a good approach. That would be kind of to build up everything else simultaneously. And I think for maybe a future piece with this too, I might actually do like my own toning layer, my own kind of underpainting for like the next mini that I'm planning on doing. I'm wanting to do a series of minis for an upcoming gallery. So this is the first of a couple minis that I'm hoping to make here in the next week or so. But for the next one, yeah, I was thinking about maybe doing like an underpainting of like a splash of like some warmer colors, again, kind of accentuating the wood color just to help neutralize some of the blues in case the next one has a lot of blue colors. Maybe if the next one's warm, I might do like an underpainting of like some cooler colors. It's more of like just being able to kind of neutralize some colors, and especially to kind of work on a surface that's not pure white. It's oftentimes hard for me to work on a pure white piece of paper because gauging colors can be very challenging, because when you're painting on top of sort of a finished painting, you're seeing colors in comparison to other colors on the canvas. And it makes it easier to really see colors as they kind of truly are. But when you're even like mixing colors on top of a white surface or a white palette, oftentimes there's a little bit of the skew in terms of the contrast between colors. It makes it really hard to get your color accuracy when you're working on top of something that's pure white. So this just made it a lot easier to be able to see the colors accurately and get the colors looking how I wanted them to look. So I was really having a lot of fun with, painting on the wood surface. It actually blended really interestingly. I wasn't exactly sure how it would blend on the surface because I was thinking that the paint would kind of sink into the grain quite a bit and make it a little harder to actually blend out a lot of the colors. But I found that it actually blended really well, especially here in the water. A lot of those colors really blended together super nicely. And yeah, it just really, it had a good feel to it. I just wasn't certain about the texture. And I'm somebody who really likes to have my paintings really have a good, soft, and consistent texture to them. I'm not super big on like seeing like bold brushstrokes in my paintings. I know a lot of other artists that do really like that, and I think that's perfectly fine. I just personally, like in my own artwork, I really like things to be like really smooth and have a very consistent texture to them. But I think with this wood grain, it would actually benefit from using like heavy body acrylics and really kind of building up on top of the wood grain. And I think that would actually work really well. with this surface here. But yeah, so I'm kind of going through area by area, just filling out the different sections, and yeah, having fun with this area where the light is being casted onto the seat, the different reflections in the cast shadows from the window panes, and then I'm going into the animals very last and kind of filling those in again with the shadows of the window panes being casted onto their faces. I think it just makes a really interesting scene. It kind of pushes them into the distance a little bit with those shadows. They don't stand out too much, but I think that really kind of helps it look really incorporated into the scene. Like they're not just like, you know, a sticker of an animal kind of put on top of the painting. They're really like a part of the scene. And I think that's really the benefit of like shadows and having a really strong shadows in your piece is it helps really let subjects kind of settle into the scenery. So yeah, I think this has been a really fun piece for me. I have been really enjoying doing this smaller painting. I do like smaller works often, like kind of like 9x12s and things like that for a couple like small work shows. But this one I'm hoping to submit to is a miniature show, so 5x5 is about the largest you can go. And so it was kind of a struggle to get everything looking really accurate to the way that I wanted to at this scale. I feel like with a larger scale, I could have had a little more room to kind of blend out some areas, get some more definition in some of the details. But it also was just a really good challenge to see how far I could kind of push some of the smaller brushes to really get those small details, to really, you know, show the painting, to make it look lifelike and have all the details that I really wanted in this piece. For this piece, I actually used a fairly limited palette. I was using white, a black, a burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and a viridian, and then a deep yellow as well. And I normally like to kind of mix my own colors. I don't really like having very specific colors for each thing. I find that it's a lot easier to get colors, you know, kind of subtle and nuanced when I mix them myself. So I don't really like to have a huge range in my palette. And I know that people can have even more simplified palettes like the Zorn palette or whatnot that go even down to like, you know, 3 or 4 colors. But I think even with just those limited colors there, I think I was able to get kind of a harmony with the piece that really helped everything kind of sit together and kind of work together in the end. But yeah, I was using the Holbein Acrylic Gouache for this piece. I just recently got a set of the Holbein acrylic gouache, and it's been a lot of fun to work with this medium. So for finishing this piece, I'm probably going to go about varnishing it the same way that I varnish most of my paintings, doing a spray-on varnish, an isolation coat, then a gloss acrylic varnish. That's how I finish most of my gouache pieces. But with this one in particular, because it's on the cradled frame, I also have to paint the edges. I'll probably do like a black edge I'll probably paint the edges of the cradled panel black. And then I will varnish the whole thing. And you can actually get floater frames for these smaller miniatures as well, which is totally an option. But I think just for keeping kind of the cost low in terms of, you know, buying frames, I think I'll probably keep it at this size here and just kind of paint the outsides. So this is the finished piece. I'm really happy with this. I think it turned out super cute and fun. And I'm excited to create some more miniatures, maybe with kind of a similar theme going forward, kind of to make a continuous, like theme for the overall show, the couple of paintings that I'm hoping to submit. So yeah, I really appreciate you watching. Thanks so much, and I hope to see you in the next video.